other humans in our lives. What's the importance of talk about? So Iran said that the beauty of the founding documents is that they create union that protects individuals. But you have spoken about the value of common welfare, cohesion, and stuff. So maybe elaborate on what is the role of cohesion and collective method multiple together and connect. Ron and I are actually having a disagreement about empirical reality. But could enlightened rational political thought features state there isn't really a nation other than the nation collective is created by years collective. Now, I think conservatives of all stripes, kind of individuals, and then there's and they're really anything else. When they look at that, they say, before you get to consequences, terrible. When we try to understand domain, subject, try to understand it, we try to come up with a small number of concepts and of relations among the concepts, which is supposed to be able to explain, to illuminate as much as possible the important things in place in the domain. And conservatives say most of what's going on in politics, but also in personal human relations as well. But just human artificial thing. And then conservatives say, well, look, well, when this artificial thing, and the consequences are horrific, not describing reality. But conservative reality ends with empirical what are human beings like? And the first thing to notice about you conservatives notice that they're sticky. Clumps, they're into groups, any arbitrary collection of human beings and set them to a task or just them alone. And quickly on and those groups are all structured hierarchies, competition, and the hierarchy was leader of the country. But they're everywhere you look in society, universally, there are groups and they're structured internally hierarchies, and then their internal competition. Think about scientific explanation. Allow that there are different levels of explanation. A macroscopic object like a table doesn't have properties that are directly derived from properties of the atoms or the molecules or the microfibers that make up the and that's what academics call emergent properties. Get up to the level of the table, it has properties that you put through it. That's just not know just by looking at service or political, social that has being thinking about what is that drawn to very elegant is right. But that tell you what characteristics are of this hierarchy structure. As soon as you have that, it has its quality. An example question, what the other answer that question. I try to answer it by saying the shorthand for means individuals have the capacity to another individual within the their perception of themselves. Create a bond, like a bondage. Atoms creates a bond. That doesn't duality within the one, but that isn't reality. A bond. That bond is stuff. Political events, political are made come together at the distance of, of, of these bonded that's the reality of solid. So when I hear these discussions about state, I feel like most of the reality, in order to understand political reality, understand what makes human beings coherent, what makes them dissolve, what makes them art, and creating civil wars and that kind of thing. We also know um, uh, what practice Bible do come together and on that. We think about democratic society, we're talking about different tribes, tribal groups, they come together to form a nation, and they're so often being like we were talking about the American Revolution, and nevertheless, like, how? And that leads to the question, like, how does honor, the giving of honor by one group to another, how does create, there's the all questions you have to answer them in order to talk about uh, the reason why one should rather than theoretical philosophical reality we don't have as long as
as you're talking, the metaphor popping up in my mind, and this is also something that bothers me with theoretical metaphors. There's some sense in which there's all theories of everything try to describe the basic how they interact together. Once you do, you have a sense that you understand all of reality. Sense you do, and that's an understanding how the individual begins. If you're saying, hey, you're also creating chemistry, biology, all of that actually comes together. The stickiness of molecules, how they build different systems together, some flourish, some can make pancakes, bananas, some can make poison, all those kinds of things. They're the full stack of constructed from the fundamental basics. And yes, you're saying that no, just like the theoretical physicist, it all starts like you need to preserve fundamental reality, individual atom society. So yes, so the follow you, basically ethical you, like yeah, good, and you can understand history unless you understand motivation. And I have a view about what kind of home, and particularly from political perspective, voluntary ones in which we join, we want to leave, want to leave, and ones that help us, and clearly groups help us to whatever it is a goal is ultimately happiness. The lots of once more.
Yeah, which
Lots of the question of what is the standard well-being algorithm that maximizes well-being of group, in function? Is it something inherent to the measure as goodness and to help with the individual get that the group to function well? You don't really care about me. The goal being of the individual. That's why voluntary, why out constantly not achieve out. That's why you should think group. And it's on an issue that's crucial. This is why to me immigration is so important, right? Open immigration.
because that's another group that I would like to fall into, in and out. And I'd like people to go and join that group that, that they believe will allow for them happiness. But let me say that, that's a description that I recognize that's not reality. I recognize that that's not reality in which history, you know, recognizing that such as that the individual, this the master being, however they evolve, clearly started out in a tribal context, matter, followed power over the group, how the group should work. Uh, the history of the history of knowledge, and part of the knowledge is the value of an individual that in religion, that in philosophy, that and then people tribes and empires and conflict between empires and fight a lot of different things. Like but kind of different philosophies, different sets of ideas, different collectives, different being reason structure. And after I don't know 2,000 years of kind of known people, we don't know much about it. 2,000 years of known history, you can sit back and evaluate. And I think that's what is done in the Enlightenment. And sit back, so you sit back and evaluate. What holds human flourishing and what doesn't? What do we mean by good? Who's what? Now, since I don't believe that there was some rule, not there was something typically shows that my human flourishing doesn't have. So I can show that the Sun promotes my flourishing, promotes your well, general welfare in that sense. Individuals flourish. We can look at all the examples of how we evolve and what leads to bloodshed, what doesn't, and what flourishing. The idea of it, and then about how to create a around that, a system that recognize and allow for the formation of groups, but just under the love voluntary. You can't be forced to join a group. You can't be coerced. Other than the fact that you're born in a place, but that's not force. There's a difference between metaphysics and this is something that came up in the debate that Yoram said not all voluntary. He kind of emphasized that a lot of where we are is not voluntary. We're grounded. We're connected so much. How how can a human free when you're describing individual free some part of who we are? Part, well, because what do you mean by freedom? Freedom doesn't mean the negation of the laws of physics, right? It doesn't mean ignoring freedom means the ability within the available to choose, being able to choose. Um, in a political context, the negation absent of code. So once you're an adult, you'll understand if you're born with a religious context, absolutely, you're an adult, that thing put on you, evaluate, and look at conflict or whatever, and choose your philosophy of life, your values, like that's freedom is one either coerced by the state, by the group, or by society around you to follow, or your the expectation is and is pressure is forms of particular. And my view is no, you be in a position to be able to choose your path, and that choice look around, evaluate based on knowledge. That that's fundamentally what freedom means. Yes, you cannot choose your parents. Of course, nobody claims that within what is. I think coercion, dichotomy, these are new concepts.
by its own tradition. Heralded, but these are most inherited by its own tradition. In order, for example, just generally not go into somebody else's yard, because that's the custom here is we don't go into somebody else's yard without the permission. And so we're talking about 500 years ago. According to the changes that our government filed, I very little because people are so. People what he's saying is our our nation, our tribe, have strong tradition which channels through being honored and dishonored. That's a reality in every society, and it's not captured by your disproportion and lack of proportion. When I'm dishonored, if I don't care for my aging mother, coerce it comes with guns to my head. But I am being pressured guidelines.
But I'm saying that's wrong, and I'm saying that because that can you come back for this. Well, but that's the standard by which we value what a good tradition is a bad tradition. The English.
Wait, you're getting fast. First, I want to know fact. Is it true that all societies work like this? Because if all societies work like this, the thing we should be free from it is.
No, I don't know. Much of what happened in America. I think what happened. All and then the question is, understand why that is. I don't want people doing what I think is right just because I think it's right. I know in a society. Yeah. Somebody found it. Well, I want people to understand. I want to have respect for profit, not because value. I want people not to motive, but because they have an understanding of why motive is bad and wrong, and for them, and I think that's language, education, and so we don't just law, but we now treat individuals as so covering now their own value. That's the big why the break I think the declaration the society man falling because society individuals understand them and now become a tradition respectful. They're not following but they good. That's the one and that is what does it. Certainly, I think that's a tragedy. All we good values because the danger. I mean, well, okay, right? It kills you, right? Property, if color, all conditions, and yet something they make it's white just become all no, not. There's something wrong. And it's happiness. We're talking about reason, but I think sort of linger on the part. You kind of said that primary that was a great mention, but to me it's not at all obvious how that's not also fundamental worship, celebrated and protected. Which is now, I suppose, the argument you're making when you start to let state define what the stickiness, how the stickiness looks. But you're really like the voluntary aspect. But I just see the observation humans pretty happy they form community, find that romantic partnership, family. Some communities, people are miserable in other communities. Nature community has some bonding, but not healthy, not good. Don't life. Um, so I absolutely. I mean, I'm a lover, not a fighter, right? So I'm love. The whole philosophy, I think, it's a love-based philosophy. I fight in order to love. So it's love is at the core of all of it. It's a love of life, the world out there, and it's a love of other people because they represent the value of you. So yes, is there. My point is age shows conscious, and this is I'm put aside this get this thing for a minute, forget coercion, forget all that. But I would encourage individuals to do, and this is where I'm not primarily a political in politics. I get to talk most about that. I'm primarily interested in human beings, how they live, and morality. And what I would urge individuals to think about their relationship, choose the best relationship possible, but outbreak relationship because other human beings bring immense value. And when I write, I don't quote it enough, but I write about the trader principle. It's easy and obvious to think of it materialistic than I get. I do the trading. My wife does the other day with trading. But trading is much subtle, can be much more spiritual. It's about the trading emotion, about the way one said it. What I think trade. I'm like, no, that seems to make it but I don't think it's trade. Friendship is incredibly important in life. Love is incredibly important in life. Having a group of friends is incredible. All of these are thinking important. Okay, I'll try to be eloquent. So, you give people freedom. You give well, not politics, relations. But we have a dynamic going on here in terms of differing and overlaps. But there is a worry that history by give people freedom in terms of they get really thoughtful. Like if you emphasize freedom as the highest, like start getting more Tinder online dating, thinking it's solved chemistry. Start to have a gas versus liquid, right? That's the word. You have to study what actually happens. Emphasize that thinking is on human back, exercise voluntary choice. The danger of that is that to be implemented or interpreted in certain ways by us flawed that are not stable around all of our really, I mean, especially young, get horny, you make are suboptimal. The point is you have to look at the reality of different things. Talk about is the ideal life, the ideal relationship. What are you up to? I think you both agree on what's important. That community is important, freedom is important. What are you emphasizing? Really emphasizing individual, and you're emphasizing, you're emphasizing more family.
I don't want to deny the places. think that there really is a very great change in civilization when the Moses announced that you are created in the image of God. That's a step, as far as we know, without precedent before that in history. And to a very large degree, I mean, one of the kind of unspoken on is no, I think going oh, that's pretty right.
We'll talk about this a little bit, listeners. So, many things with international. They're also a religious scholar, source, or at least leverage the Bible much, not much, but some of the wisdom. Like,
Look, the way that John looks at enlightenment at Ayn Rand, that's the way that I see Hebrew scripture and it comes from it. It has the same kind of place in my life, and I just I don't know how much we want to explore it, but I think that agreement about positive value of creativity, positive value of desire to the world, and my book that including his or her desire to improve family, his tribe, his congregation, nation, but it comes from a run called self desire to make things better for yourself. The Bible, Judaism, that is a positive thing. Of course, it's far, but it's positive, and it doesn't carry these kinds of, turn the other cheek, you should give away your cloak, you should love your enemy. These kinds of Christian tropes do not exist. And so I like your runs. I do feel like he goes too far on various things, but I also hear, underneath that I can hear currents of resistance, things that about Christianity that you often find.
To answer your question, make an argument, turn it. I tend to equate that with altruism. I tend to done justice. Well, okay. Don't love yourself. Lack of self-respect. Well, let me push back on that. I like that you especially on Twitter. So
I like block the defender.
So what? Twitter aside, is you're investing in the long-term version of yourself versus term. So that's the way I think about it. It's like energy, turning out a cheap loss walk to the fire gracefully. Perhaps frame that as not a then that's not being altruistic, but there is something dramatic about that kind of place.
Putting yourself, a better version of yourself. Not only slavery, but I think every religious prophet probably has a version of that. You can't join together and find it terrible. Not, so I think about that. About it. Individual is of, of value as an individual. Nevertheless, question about what is good for that person, and also what makes it. I'm not sure they're exactly the same thing. They're both certainly relevant and and I like the empirical popularized by George. Durkheim argued that that British trying to bring points of apparent anomy, lack of law, and the argument that individuals basically are healthy and happy when they find a place in a hierarchy, within a low place in a hierarchy, and they struggle or surprise in the hierarchy, but they know where they are. They like to say they know what their identity is. As associates themselves, self-advance, take on layers of paths of particular hierarchy. I agree with Iran, are pernicious and oppressive. Some of them are better. What we might think about as time are become healthy off by themselves without kind of stress. The minute that if you accept that this is empirical reality, the iron law, you can't do anything. I can tell you free of all kinds of one and get them things that, as you say, dissolve, that they're going to contempt the fires. I'm not going to kill your man. I'm burn them all down. Let them say all of the things that get them Marxist or actually trying to believe. Or you can make something really not to Marxist privilege or in the young like go and exercise with all the time. Burden all value of yourself. Almost about the value about I think but and we're moving into ethical. I don't write to tell people we're doing whatever the hell you want. No, want to go. But don't think I'm doing what I think. One has to provide all guidance. Whatever for your life. Life is a question. I believe that I value guidance. Oh, guidance. And you think of a lot. Guidance. Guidance. That's a whole lot of that. So that sometimes when they do this like
the idea that if given the country, the world will be really in a really different direction. And this is why I do what I do, because I think core of it, the only way to change it is not to impose a new set of ideas to the top, like worry about it. Plus, I don't believe it's challenge ideas, question present an alternative morality, an alternative set of morals, an alternative political point. It has to start with morality. Don't, and my morality is based on the life and good life. I know that, but life, that's why it's good, right? The survival, right? Publishing, happiness. Um, Politics is movement of that is not an and so the real issue, you ask what is the value of most value, get values from the people. We don't produce all of them. We don't produce all of them. We don't produce all the material value. Other people have a massive benefit for us because they produce values. And there's a massive benefit for us. Values, not just in economics, but also in philosophy and elsewhere. Why we have teachers, why we have moral teachers. Moral teachers are important to help guide us. But not all of us are philosophers. But what I do demand, well, this is where I put a understand what, right? Don't embrace it all because it was tradition. Don't embrace them all because your parents embrace them all just because your teachers challenge. Think about it. Embrace it because you embrace it. You might be wrong. You might embrace the wrong one, but take all responsibility over your life by evaluating, testing, challenging what you have, what you're what you're going to pursue. And I acknowledge that most people do that, and this is why intellectual leadership is important. This is why you want to get people want the critical good voices, so that those people who think for themselves end up being followers, but they end up being followers good followers. But for the thinkers in the world, who I think count shape society.
No, shape society.
Wait a minute, that counts in a sense that you can dismiss the lives of others, because I'm obviously anti-coercion and anti-violence. Yes, I don't want to sound like Plato, but in a sense that they're the ones who end up shaping the world. They're the ones who end up shaping how the world is. I want those people to make choices about their values and not to just accept them based on tradition or based on commandment or based on where they happen to grow. And in that sense, again, I do, and this is the thing, point where I disagree, but I'm not exactly sure. I do believe in universal values. That is, there are things that are good, and there are things that are evil, and I think we agree on that. And there are systems that communism and fascism are evil. Well, I think we should be able to agree that something yes, some good. Yeah. And maybe there's middle ground where we both think that they're not particularly bad, but not particularly good, and you all might think they're better than I think they are. If we can agree on this is good, and this is evil, right? Then the systems that tend towards the good are good, systems that tend towards evil. But that's universal, right? I look at places like South Korea and culture very, very different in many respects, and yet when they adopt certain Western ideas about individualism. The Japanese Constitution could cause a in there as happiness Constitution, not because they chose it, but put it in it. But they, to some extent, adopted that, and they're successful places today. Those societies in Asia that didn't adopt are not successful societies.
Japan has a rate of what is it? 1.1 children, women. And look, there are some things. There's some places where people freedom. It's also the idea that everyone did what's right in his own eyes. Right? we're in the book of Judges, and the Bible is not an anti-freedom book. There's many. I no, we're not fine.
We will get there.
Okay.
He's gonna go.
Okay. As an aspect, I'm not asking because the Bible is such a great authoritarian book. It's not that at all. My view is if you want to know where the called the sanctity property, where does the property comes from? It comes from the Ten Commandments, from Moses saying, I haven't taken anything from camels, I haven't taken from any condemnation of unjust property of their subject. So I'm not. So I'm property and freedom. I think there's great basis for the Bible, but right now I'm focusing on this other question, which is what happens when everyone does what's right in his own eyes. That's the judges. That's moral corruption, theft, idolatry, murder, rape. I mean, that's what happens when everyone does whatever's right in his own eyes. But well, no, I'm not okay. So when I look right, there are things that I think are objective. I think it's really hard to agree to them. Almost impossible. But when I look at a country, is one birth per woman. In other words, half of the minimum necessary place. You can say whatever you want about immigration, have that discussion. But the point is that when your values are such that you're not even capable of the most basic order to themselves and their values and the way they do things, then you can't say that
I think it doesn't make you society. But
no, I think about I just think trouble. And we're in trouble.
Yeah. Give me a second.
So, man, did we enter into his hierarchy? That's it.
We should talk about hierarchy. How do you explain the situation you got in increase value in family? Expand on how do you explain that situation? That's society troubling these kind of private nature.
And part of family, congregation, community, private, when individual things that are happening in society are things that happen to him first. And I want to emphasize this is not the standard view of collective organic. That's not what have are both enter into a society. They're loyal and to one another. That society like but also by bending the rules, what the in many societies throughout the liberal West, but also countries affected by the West by what is collapse of one at what buys the whole. Make choices that are as you only call them selfish because the purpose of them is self-expression, moving up in the heart, achieving honor or wealth. But when topics framework of a particular society and identify with it, to understand what it is, not every talking about society wide. There are urges have a time and that they're on project. Great majority stopping risk, stopping to get married, stopping start companies. stop being willing to put themselves out great because guide rail what kinds of and keep social feedback honors kids like getting married and having children crushed. And when been crushed by the falsehood that individual make all your own decisions, then they will then be free and make all their own decisions. They don't stop. They stop being human.
That's powerful. Doug, respond to that? Yes. So I don't think anybody should have children. It's a goal. Okay, there's a good tweet. Tweet that you can make. I think anybody should have children for the goal of perpetuating their nation or expanding their society. Did make horrible parents. That was the goal. But I think children because they want to embrace that talent, that beauty, experience, that thing very, very hard, very, very difficult experience in life. Because it's a reject for long term, but such a enjoy and love the cream and other human beings. Natural equation. Beautiful, selfish. And by the way, not every natural. People have children. All parents out there would stop. I mean, life is precious. Life of suffering is bad. Bad to see people suffering. A lot of people put into parents with the capacity to ever live good life. It's a tragic, bad thing. So I don't measure the health of a society in how many children is it having, or health of a couple, or whether they have children. Those are make a children, not have children. Rationalize value. And now, when you look at society overall, I think having children and not having children is a reflection of something. I think it's a reflection of certain optimism, but a reflection of long-term. Society doesn't have children, don't have children there because their children are long-term investment. It's both planning, effort, the long term. But those are all issues. And again, we're confusing, we're mixing. When I say Japan, look how well Japan, I don't mean Japanese, how many kids they're having, what kind of life they're having, in terms of kind of. Think about the alternatives Japan faces. About they tried empire, very nationalistic. It not too well for them, but they interact with. They could have become North Korea. You know how that? They could have been Cambodia. Cambodia. And yes, maybe Cambodia said lots of children. But God, I'd rather and any day than have children in poverty, living circumstances. But in the context of the available regime for the Japanese race, they want generally prosperity and freedom, individual value. Not politically, because they implement the philosophical foundation, the moral foundation. I would like to. They're still being impacted by Kantian, alien, whatever philosophy that's out there in the West, destroying the metaphor. So you give people freedom. Now, what do they do with it? And if they have a bad philosophy, they're going to do bad things with that. Right? You tell people to do whatever they choose to do, but if they have bad ideas, do bad things. So it is true that the primacy of morality and the primacy of philosophy has to be recognized. It's not the primacy of politics. And indeed, you don't get free society unless you have some elements of decent philosophy. But you can get free societies with a rotten philosophy. They don't stay free very long.
Understand how can philosophy doesn't care about posterity? You're willing to say, I'm offering guidance. I think you should be a trader. All relationships should be voluntary. Those are interesting. But the moment that it comes to posterity, future, there being the future, let's say that there were a society that was the way, in general, according to your view, let's say there was a society. How can you not care whether that society passes on to the next generation or not.
But the way to pass it on to the next generation is through ideas, not through having children. Having children is an individual choice that some people are going to make and some people are not. But they're fundamental that preserve the good life.
What does that even
I think there's a sense to it.
If every generation from now on, your society that was good at a certain point has half as many people, very quickly, it's just going to get overrun. Overrun by whom? What do you mean overrun by whom? Are we just simply agents of normal? You're the start, and you have all, like warrior value, but you stop having, you get overrun, you get defeated.
It is a spot of this good thing, not a bad thing. But
again, at that point, you have to have the ability to have enough children, create enough wealth and enough power, enough strength.
Questions about how many you think it is. You decide.
We're talking about what kind of intellectual heritage your children.
So, and those ideas that are perpetual, the good ideas.
No, they're not going to. They don't generate. I think about how they don't use information. I mean, as I said, every liberal society on earth, but I'm not saying democratic collapse.
There's not a single liberal society on earth that I'm willing to defend. Because they're not living by my
Okay, so
they're not accepted by us. So they have a semblance. I have a semblance of a political system that is a little bit like what I know. They certainly don't have a moral foundation. I believe that people who have the right moral foundation, most of them, not all of them, but most of them will have children. Most of them will continue. Most of them will fight for a future. But not because they care what happens to them, but because they care about their lifetime, and part of having fun during one's lifetime, having kids, is projecting into the future.
Who's going to tell me that people have children that are fun when they're 4 years old? They're not fun when they're 50.
When they're 50,
they're just not fun. Don't learning something. You don't. When you talk about marriage, also there are times they're fun and there are times they're not fun.
Fun is not exactly the right word. But you certainly do it for happiness. You do it for fulfillment. You do it as a challenge. You do it for making your life better, for making your life interesting, for making your life challenging. So part of it is hard work, but you do it because it makes your life a better life. Very interesting. Very listening. All the cultural backbone where everybody comes up with background, the moral ideas that is involved in it. You have some individual. I think around the going to naturally. You're not everything. Well, basically saying you're not going to do some of the things. You're not more and more short-term optimization, long-term optimization beyond your own life. Posterity. So I don't think about posterity. I don't know what posterity means, right? My children's life, maybe when I have children's life, but it ends. I can't predict it. It's ridiculous to try to think about 300 years into the future. So much. That's well, no, I don't think. They set up the whole idea was to so perpetuating that if enough would perpetuate.
No systems are self-perpetuating. Rise and fall.
They don't get perpetuate. I don't believe in that.
Let me just start with that. Great tools in society's present. Seen the decline, understood it, provided to redirect and bring it back up. You can't agree to that?
I don't see it that way at all. Yes, I want people out there to rebel against conventional morality. Conventional morality is destructive to lives and largely to posterity because I think it's unsustainable, it's not good. I think conventional morality is Christian morality, morality is secular, Christian lens, and I think it's destructive. But I don't want them to dump that and not replace it with something. I want, and I think it's necessary, an so for people to have a moral code and to have a moral code, morality is a set of guidelines to live life. It is a set of values that guide you to help you identify what good and what bad is.
Here's the thing. Let me know what you're saying. This morality. You're not saying other things. You're basically saying reason to arrive at a lot of things. Why are you so sure that
Nothing else?
No, honestly, but like it seems like obvious too. But first of all, humans have limited cognitive capacity to even to actually function that well. From an artificial intelligence researcher perspective.
The whole discussion about what the such a thing artificial intelligence. That is what it is.
But see, here's the thing. You're very confident about this particular thing, but not about other aspects of communication present. Human relation, love, connection between us. It's very possible to argue that all of the accomplishments of reason do not exist without the connection.
Of course, that's true.
It's not obvious. It's possible that reason is the property of collective, of multiple people interacting with each other. Look at the greatest invention in history. Some people tell that story by individual inventors. You can argue that's true. Some people say that it's a bunch of people in a room together, the idea of bubbling. And if you're saying individual is primary, and they have the full power and the capacity to make choices, I don't know if that's necessarily obvious.
So there's a straw manning going on here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course.
My favorite thing.
You don't do it, and you do it more politely than anybody else I know would do it. Of course, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Of course, invention and science is collaborative. Not always, not 100%. Newton stood on the shoulders of giants. I don't know how collaborative he was. He, as a bubbling up and testing ideas out with other people. But this is a metaphysical fact. You can't eat for me. No collective stomach. You can't eat. You can provide me with food, but I need to do the eating. You can't think. You can help stimulate my thought. You can challenge my thinking. You can add to it. But in the end of the day, only I can either do my thinking or not do my thinking. But I need to think.
But you can think all by yourself.
Well, what does that mean, all by yourself, right? And can I think on a desert island? Yes, I can think on a desert island. Can I think as big and as broad and as deep as I can in Aristotle's Lyceum? Of course not. I'm a much better thinker in Aristotle's Lyceum. Or in any kind of situation like this where you're going to challenge me and I have to come back and I think deeply about what it is you said and why I'm not communicating very effectively and why you're not understanding me. Of course, now you're causing me to think much more deeply and to challenge me. But it's still true that I have to think. And if I don't think for myself, he's going to think for me, right? So this is why I'm not a philosopher. I'm certainly not an original thinker. I recognize the fact that there are geniuses that are much smarter than Aristotle and I study the world. I try to understand it to the best of my ability. But I don't take it as gospel. I take it as, this is something I need to think about. I need to learn it. I need to understand it. It's good for my life. It's important. But I have to think it won't be mine. It'll be man's, but it won't be mine. I to my soul, to my consciousness, to my mind. But it's still true that I have to think for myself. Not on a desert island. I now regret every desert island in the book as an example. But, there is progress. Progress clearly proves it. Clearly was misunderstood. I didn't make myself clear enough. Looking for what I meant. But I do not advocate, but thinking alone in the dark, not engaging with reality, not studying history, not knowing about the world, all on a desert island on its reckless one. No, I'm a trader. So I enjoy what we're doing right now because it's challenging. It makes me a better thinker. It's interesting, the fact that a lot of people are going to watch this plays into it as well. But I would probably do enjoy conversation. So there you go. I would enjoy with your conversation if it wasn't being recorded, but because that kind of conversation makes me better. There's some people who would. There's some people who make it worse, right? They want to walk away from the conversation. The harmful where choice comes in. I want to be able to choose who I engage with. I don't always have that choice. The public intelligence go in front of audience. Always choose who it is, and you want to choose who you engage with, and if you don't, you want to choose the forum in which you engage, how you, and the standard. There's no other standard. You asked the question about why reason. Because that's where the values come from. That's the only tool we have to discover truth. Yes, reason is something that it doesn't guarantee truth. It doesn't guarantee you're always right, fallible, but it's all we have. It's the tool in which we evaluate the world around us, and we come to about it. There just isn't other emotions. Emotions are not tools of cognition.
Consciousness is a tool. Emotion, like love, all of these things are ways that experience the world. They're the best tool.
But there's a difference in experiencing the world and evaluating the world in terms of what is right and what's not. And emotions and love are consequences that are primary. Emotions are consequences of you come to. Your emotions will change very quickly, relatively speaking, when your evaluations of a situation. Different people can see exactly the same scene and have completely different emotions because they're bringing different value systems and they're bringing different thoughts to the process.
Maybe love is primary, but let me ask.
Love is the same thing. You can fall out of love with somebody. Why? Because you learned something new. Because you discovered something new about the person. Now you don't love them.
The wrong podcast to bring up love. We'll talk forever about it. So, you wrote the book, National Contrasting Nation States, empires, and governance like the nation. So, you argue that nationalism provides the collective right of free themselves. Continuing our conversation, why is this particular collection of humans a uniquely powerful way to preserve it?
Before I say anything on the subject, I should emphasize that I'm not a rationalist. I'm an empiricist. I'm offering what I think is a valid observation of human history. I don't have some kind of deductive framework to prove it best. And to hear about the way national states work and about the way empires work and the way tribal societies work, what we don't know is, is it possible to invent something else? There's a lot of things we don't know. So, caveat that I'm making empirical observations. The basic argument is human beings form collected naturally, smoothly, and for most of human history and prehistory, as far as human beings lived in tribal societies. Tribal societies are societies. There's constant friction and constant warfare among very small groups, among families and clans. And the turning point in human history, the invention of large-scale agriculture, allows the creation of vast wealth, allows the establishment of standing armies, militia. Sargon of Akkad says, I can pay 5,000 men to do nothing other than drill starts of war, and then I'm going to send them out to conquer the neighboring states. There you have empire. The Bible, of course, of our image, our conception of a world of independent nations that are not constantly trying to conquer one another. The source of that is the Bible. And the biblical world is one in which Israel and various other small nations are trying to fight for their independence against world empires, against empires, Babylonian, Assyrian, Persian, Egyptian, which aspire to rule the world. My claim is fundamentally moral, that whenever you conquer a foreign nation, you're murdering and you're stealing,
you're destroying you as your own would say, force cause people that there is something in prophets that rebels against ongoing atrocity, carnage, of trying to take over the whole. And um, and and there's a prudential, practical argument that the world is governed best when there are multiple nations, when they're free to experiment, chart their own. I mean, they have their own God, they have their own morality, they have their own forms of economy and government. And what tends to happen in history is that when something is successful, like when people, different nations, while those people are flourishing, they're succeeding, and it's imitated. In the way that the Dutch invented the stock market, and the English said, look, that makes them powerful, so we'll adopt it. There's endless examples of that. So that's the argument. The argument is we don't a priori deductively from self-evident principles what is best. Best to have a world in which people are trying different things.
So, quick question. Word nationalism has presented negative light connection to the national Nazi Germany, for example. So, you're looking empirically at a world of nations that respect each other.
National way that I inherited in my tradition, which is principle, like the world is governed best when many nations are able to chart their course. That's nationalism. As far as the Nazis, was an imperialist whole theory. If you pick up, I come to the point.
I'm actually reading it right now. Mein Kampf.
Right. If you read Mein Kampf, this goal for Germany, Lord of the Earth, and Leaders of the Globe, and test the idea of the nation states. We might as well have said Jewish.
So let me ask, from an individual perspective, for national, what do you make of the value of country? I connect that. I personally, a patriot. I love the country, or I am such for love country. In a random way, I enjoy. I love is good. Love is a good word. Well, I love a lot of things. Like the particular love is a little bit loving your country. That's an interesting love. People are a little uncomfortable. Especially when that love is not governed by opinion. You just love the country. It represents a certain thing. It's like 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 I was marching around like parks at farm or something like that. It's loving community at the level of nation. Very interesting. I don't know if that's an artifact of the past that we're going to have to strip away. I don't know if I was just raised kind of community, but I appreciate that. But I guess the thing I'm torn about is that love of country that I have in my heart, that I now love America and I consider myself American, that repeatedly caused me earlier by Stalin, and I would have probably died. But I don't think I would have probably died if I was German, and I would probably die American. I think about this a lot.
A radical counterfactual answer.
I'm not sure. I mean, but I think about this a lot. Obviously, in history, and put my way I about most situations, and but really trying to hard work to put myself in that moment and thinking through it. I just know myself psychologically. What I'm susceptible to, that's a negative way to phrase it, but what I would love. And so I'm just saying, my question is the love of nation a useful or a powerful moral, from a moral philosophy perspective, a good
always asking the thing. It's worth asking whether there's any way to live without it. The idea of national independence, of a world or a continent governed by multiple people, that is political. Somebody came up with the Bible or elsewhere. Someone came up with the idea, and a lot of people. But nation, not every have any record of their nation. And so the fact of people creating families, families creating an alliance of clans, clans creating alliances, tribes creating alliances of and alliances becomes the nation. That everywhere in history, everywhere we look, and the love of a group of tribes come together in order to fight when they're trying to destroy your way of life, steal your land, and harm your women and children. The love of leadership that brings it together. A George Washington figure, or an Alfred the Great figure, or Saul, the biblical Saul, somebody has the daring to unite tribes over their internal mutual hatred, grievance, and rally them around a language, an identity that radical being able to break get rid of it.
The problem is that it's leveraged by
Yes, but that's everything. It's the thing. You can have children, you can make a lot of money for evil. You can have a gun for self-defense for evil. Come on, that's human. That's being human.
Yes, making love this primary, which I don't think it is. There are lots of people. I know there are lots of people in the world that they don't love it because the nation is not worth loving. That is, love is conditional. It's not unconditional. Love is conditional on the value that's presented to you. So I lived through this experience in my own life. Right, I grew up in Israel at a time of everything patriotism in the States. I would say trained to when I saw grenades jump on it. That was every song and every story and everything about the state is everything. And when the flag went up, I got tears down. I mean, I bought into it completely. And at some point, I rejected it. And I changed. I changed my alliance. I rejected my love of Israel. It's not that I don't love it anymore, but it's not my top love. And I'm certainly not looking for the grenade to jump on it, and I'm not fight with it. And I fell in love with the idea of America. I love the idea of America more than I love it. And I can see myself falling in love, out of love with America, given where it's heading. Right? It's not automatic. It's on what it is it represents and what it is, what value it represents for me. And I think that's always the case with love. It's not true that children have to love their parents. That's the ideal, and hopefully most children love their parents because their parents. But some children fall out of love with their parents because their parents don't. They love, and the same with the other way around. I think not loving children. So love is conditional, not automatic. But let me have an agreement with. Let me say I have an private.
Stop the blow right. Most talk to you about his idea, and I don't want to talk about Ayn Rand, but I want to say something. One thing about Ayn Rand. All my kids read Ayn Rand's books. My father read The Fountainhead. I don't know. We know Ayn Rand, and it's incredibly difficult. Why is it difficult? Not of creating business of it, and weird and devil. I mean, it's that stuff moves me, and I do admire it. But to read, thousand nobody, nobody, children, nobody having marriage, no one is running an admirable government fighting for the best cause anywhere. They're on. I, I feel like focusing on one aspect of the expression, and then everything else is erased, thrown out as though it's not part of reality. And I'm scared. I'm scared what happens to teenagers hormonally or in any. No, that's they're programmed to pull away from their parents' experiment. They're biologically programmed. A book which says, look, you don't have to have a family. You don't have to raise. You don't have to have a country. You don't have to fight for anything. All you have to do is put yourself in trade. I constructed because it's not realistic. It's not real.
But I got none of it. I got none of it from my dad. The books were not about a family. You could write a book in Ayn Rand style, but where people have a family. The goal, the purpose, it's a novel. It's a novel. Is delimited. There's one family in Gulch Gulch, and there's a little passage about raising the value of that, because it's not what she is working about. But that doesn't exclude it. When I read Alice, and I read it over the years. It never occurred to me, oh, Ayn Rand's anti-family. I shouldn't have a family. That thought never came into my mind. I always wanted to have children. I continue to want to have children. I thought of it a little differently. I thought of how I would find a partner a little bit differently. I thought about what I would do for a partner differently, but not that I wouldn't want to get married.
The question I have is, what effect has society outside of you? So, for example, you mentioned love should be conditional. I think,
well, it is. Whether you like it or not, you might pretend that it isn't, but it's always conditional.
I mean, try to say something in a sense. So, could there be things that are true, like love is conditional, that if you say it often, it has a negative effect on society? So, for example, I mean, maybe I'm just romantic. Good luck saying love is conditional to a romantic partner. I mean, good, I would argue, en masse, that would deteriorate the quality of my partner of that person. Like, you have to, I mean, okay, maybe it's just, I'll just myself, but there's a certain romantic notion of unconditional love.
It's part of why you have so many destructive marriages. It's part of why
it's the problem.
Yes, it's a real problem, because yes, there is a. Don't talk about honoring. Respect that. Yes, you have to do. Love is not you marry somebody, and there's a real attitude out there called you marry somebody. Hey, now we're just exposed.
Right, Hollywood. That's the Hollywood marriage.
Marriage is work. Like all values, it's work. It's something you have to reignite every day. You have to challenges, real agreements, the things you fight about, and there's real. If it's a value, you work it out. You struggle through it. And sometimes you struggle through it. And you come to it's not going to work. And you do the marriage. And I'm all for being after really fighting for it, because it's an important value. And if you fell in love with this person for a reason, then that's something you're fighting for. I have a feeling that Hollywood goes the other way. It's not this cruising along and everything. No human relationship is like that. I love not children, not being a child. They require and they require creating the condition. Five, and that's the sense in which it's conditional. You have to look at it, and it's very easy not to do the work. It's very easy to do it. I think most people don't do it. People think it, and generally in life, they don't even play. at work. And then they take the rest of their life, and yet every aspect of your life, the art you choose, the friends you choose, the lovers you choose, all require real work to be successful. None of them are just there, because there is no such thing as.
I agree with all of that. Where the rabbis have this sort of shocking expression, pain of raising children, and I find when I speak to audiences about relations, I find that general, cross-cultural, different countries, religious backgrounds, general, young people do not know that the only way to make a marriage work is a lot of pain and overcoming. They don't know that raising children involves a great deal. They don't know that caring for and helping parents approach the end of their lives causes a great deal of pain. And everything kind of, very sketchy kind of, and I mentioned Hollywood, everything is this funny breakdown of something, but then maybe there's divorce, they shoot one another, so that then they shoot. But the reality of how hard it is and how both and overcome, and then actually in the end achieve, create something that is really almost not discussed. So to me, it's not surprising that if there's no parallel to Ayn Rand about the heroic of a marriage that was unbroken actually happened.
So maybe yes, it's a good point you're making, but if something just came to me that I've never thought of, so it's always good. This is where conversation. Look, take the Talmud in the Bible. I can't remember how many years after the Bible the Talmud is written, how long of a period it's written, how many people participated in writing. Ayn Rand was one individual. She wrote a series of books, I think, are true, but there's the beginning. There's a lot of work to apply it. So hopefully there will be one of her students who writes a book on relationship, and there'll be somebody who writes a book on developing theory in relationship and develop. I think she's got a few books on ethics, and it's in the novels, but there's a lot of work to be done, fleshing it out. What does it mean? So to say Ayn Rand didn't do everything, he didn't do everything. Okay, so what? But he laid this amazing philosophical foundation that allows us to take those things, apply them to all these realms, and she does it on a scope people us that goes from metaphysics all the way to aesthetics. And she's an original thinker on each one of them. And she might be right in wrongness aspects of it. Always happy to have a debate about where she's wrong and where she's not. There's a lot of work to be done. Right? It's not like if the objective is out there, then it is okay. Human knowledge is because Ayn Rand wrote this huge amount of done in applying particular ideas, like there was with atheism is an outlier of all these realms of human experience. Flesh it out. And one of the reasons I don't think objectivism is taken off is because it allows it to look at Let me ask a hard question here. Can I say what I agreed with you on, Masha? This is good. They're good translation. I agree about it. So I don't like the term nationalism because I fear what happens when you put an ism at the end of anything. But the nation is a good thing, and having a diversity of nations. And in this sense, I don't think one can come up. So look, I said, that the ideal nation is a nation that protects individuals. How do you do that? What are the details? How do we define property rights exactly in the internet world? There's going to be disagreement, rational, reasonable disagreement. They're going to be, in my 300 years from now, when my ideas are one final, right, there will be multiple nations trying to apply the principle of applying individual rights, and they'll do it differently. One of the benefits of federalism is that while you have a national, there's certain issues that you relegate to states, and they can try different things and look at, because there is a huge value in empirical knowledge. Comes there, you can't just use it all and figure it all out. You have to experiment. So I hate the idea of a one because experimentation is gone, and if you make a mistake, everybody's. I like the idea, and then I like the idea. But this notion of experimentation, I think, is crucial. You need a principle. You need a principle. I don't like the idea of nations. If it could be bad, right? If all the nations follow, I don't like it. What I like is the variety of all practice basically good ideas, and then we try to figure out, okay, what looks better than what is sustainable, what is.
Given how many difficult aspects of history and society we talked about, let me ask a hard question. Yeah. What so describe reason to not have hope? Look at the world. What gives you hope that in 200 years, 300 years, 500 years, like the founders of the future, that it'll be alright. And more than that, it'll be flourish.
Two things. One is history. So in the very long run, good idea. I think in the very long run, go through a dark age, come out of a dark age. The good and the just does in and is bloody and difficult, hard to get there. While I'm quite pessimistic on the short run, I'm ultimately optimistic that in the long run, idea. And I think the fundamental behind that is, I think I'm fundamentally positive about human nature. Can think, capable of reasoning, capable of figuring out the truth, capable of learning from experience. They don't always do it. It's an achievement to do it, but over time they do. And if you create right circumstances, will, and when things get bad enough, look way out. They look at maybe at history. The history looks at them. At learning from what's around them, find better ways. The human beings are an creature, right? Just amazing capacity. Love that capacity to change our environment to fit our needs, our requirements to go rest. And so again, long term, I think all of that wins out. Any right now.
What about you?
Well, I'm moved by what Yaron says, and I hear scripture. And source for your hope, Book of Exodus, the first place in history where we are presented the possibility that an enslaved people being persecuted and murdered in the worst possible regime can free itself and have a shot at a life of independence. And another inherited Jewish tradition, the way that we express by saying, God who judges. Israelis were for hundreds of years, according to the Exodus, for hundreds of years, God wakes up and he doesn't do anything until Moses kills the oppressor and goes out into the desert. So I think it's pretty realistic that God judges acts, but for a very, very long time, and not until there's stuff. I know that they want to read the Bible. They don't like reading the Bible, but I always
Welcome.
hear cry of the prophet.
How are you? I'm amazing, big dog.
Matter or opposed. I do have hope. I see trends, and right are terrible. Very possible that an unexpected turn of events appear, the possibility of a redemption there.
Let me ask, given that long arc of history that you do study the Bible, what if of this whole thing? What's the meaning of life?
I think the meaning of life, part, one touch that productive work, labor, created the heart of what I there are some more arenas, and maybe on a lot of them. To be human is inherit a world which is perfect, terribly imperfect, perfect in many ways, and uh, and God created it that way. Created a world terribly lacking, and He created us with the ability to stand up, say, I can direction, I can do something direction, I can take the time, ability, human needs to partner with God in creating the world. It's not going to stay the way it was before me. Something different. But but that is the heart. That is life. Is partner with God in creating the world that much the right direction rather than
Nudge a little bit in the direction of the world. Well, you're on. You've actually been talking the program about life quite a bit. They asked the same question, and I never tired of asking this question. When you well, I mean, you don't believe in God, so it play a role in you meaning of life. I think meaning of life is to live. I like to say to live with a capital. It's embrace it, and I agree with you in a sense. We're born into a world as human beings. One of the things that makes us different than other animals is our capacity to change that. We can actually go out there and change the world around us, and change it materially, production, change it spiritually, changing the ideas of people, the direction which humanity looks. Create a little universe. Part of it, I think, part of it, we're creating a family, create a universe, right? A little world around us. Part of the joy, and there is joy in family. It's not make it all about difficulty. I agree. Part of the idea of getting married, to create a little world, spouse of creating something that didn't exist before, building something, but it's really to live. I mean, one of the things that I see, and it saddens me, is wasted life. People who just cruise, right? They get bored. They get born in particular
place. They never challenged it. They never questioned. Just, they live, die, and nothing really did in the obfuscate life. Again, laws. It's and every aspect. So I love thoughts. I love aesthetics. I love the experience. I love relationships. I love music. I like business. I like that aspect of it. And I think people feel shallow in so many parts of their lives. That if we had 8 billion, even if it never stayed at 8 billion, but the 8 billion all live. Holy wow! I mean, what an amazing place! What an amazing experience we have. So that is, to me, is just the most that you have a short period of time on it, and it's it. Live it, experience it fully, and challenge yourself, push yourself. And let me just say something about once for me in the world in which we live, right, is that there are people who, at least in certain realms, right, and I'm inspired, and I know a lot of people don't like me. I'm inspired, for example, by Silicon Valley. I have all the political disagreements I have with that. I'm inspired by people inventing new technology. Really, I'm inspired by the people talking about intelligence, about new ideas, about pushing boundaries, science. Those things are terrific to see behind and these pockets of stuff.
Oh,
New ventures, new ideas. That inspires me. Oh, that is not dead. It inspires me. Human environment as well. Yeah, nature live are also a little bit of love there as well. You're on COVID. You're on. Thank you so much, John. I really enjoyed the yesterday and the conversation today. You spent your valuable time with me. Thank you so much. Please. Thanks for listening to the conversation. Yeah, Brooks, around to support this podcast. Check out our sponsor. Now, for the only thing necessary for the triumph of Jesus. And thank you for listening. Following conversation by grandmother is author of Drive and Possible book, host of podcast, game called What's the podcast supported. Check out our sponsor now. My conversation Brian as grandmother physics or measurement device level and the bill. Maybe now with background in project collect. Yeah, but talk about that. But literally details. Not like a concept in the 1800s, beginning of this life. And so people for the first had standards by which looking at it for now, and that's what basically Yeah, perfect. So, at that time, people realized, hey, wait, freeze over here. I can't. That's when then as all of the paper kind of actually pulled it up and put another glass. And what was so interesting, really what he saw that exact same price lenses go like this, get that bright thing in the sky over there, and still get on the square. How it did, but it's really kind of by a factor of 10x to the one. And he really transformed how we think about it, but also we are as a because we're using not to get food faster or preserve our legacy for the benefit. Mentioned together, able to see the stars, some kind of make above the early human out ground, like a little bit too much island there, so that's why look up to the stars, start to wonder if I think it's a little but also took the track. Painted lenses air ocean. So, kind of so not only it looks out, but it's also back. In other words, in the microscope, home, probably objects, they're not happening on Jupiter or the moon, Andromeda galaxy. They can see it happen using fucking. And for that, I think that took then knowledge of relativity, time travel, and it took that because we could really say, oh, we unlocked some features. I think that might be a little too much. But nevertheless, I mean, what's better than having a look back in as they that allows us to speculate. Don't actually moment occasions when I pick one out. But but a radio for it's not all right. And object pulls up the people of a radio telescope, still up and you put a resistor, a simple moving at the radio. That resistor will come to the exact same temperature. It's pretty amazing. Actually, measuring, taking the temperature out and they're going archaeology. I get into my go back, you know, I learned about market, the body temperature, but you're doing this remotely. Market, oh, okay, excellent. Mentioned time is thank you for prize. But the question that what happened with I have a question. What happened? More practical. starting on that earlier exactly some point during that first right now that forward back closer to earlier later rather coming towards us today, we know more and more about what the in fact all the hydrogen that's a very good approximation in the water molecule all of them were produced during that first 20 minutes. So I would say, actual and production of the lightest occurred in a time period similar in the TV show. Those light besides hydrogen are really counted, counter easily if not all. You don't see but those are added heavier iron, carbon, nickel. That's an example. Different types of process. However, if you go back to the Yama, or not, in other words, going backwards, the first marked a point where it affected what happened before the return of hydrogen. No. There are many people, most people, practicing preparing believe the universe began with the left. However, singularity is so far removed from anything ever hope to confront or with evidence, and really only occurs in Big Bang or black hole. So for that reason, there are now first an alternative. Let's say you can actually for the first time ask this question. That day, Tuesday, first there was a day a week before that, 24 hours, 7 days. That has a perfectly well understood models of cosmology promoted by some of the more. When I was in grad school, over no one really considered times that big thing that there was a, and people would have to don't know. But they future incarnation from it. But now they're saying is an alternative. And it's not really science. Models, by the way, the first cosmology in history, not the first cosmology in history goes back to Ra, temple of East, and in that, we talk about we that guy out in we have congregation because that's one that physical model and road, and right up until very much. You make the thing, starting with singularity, quantum cosmos, that stands in which time does not have a beginning. Many of them feature cycles, at least one cycle, into and they all common alternative. As does dominant paradigm relation thought of as a spark that ignites the hot Big Bang that earlier I missed it. In physics, I don't know your grandfather clock. Wait for a second. I can come into pendulum how many cycles there were easy questions very simple to understand tremendous
the utility recovery of the primary component field, that kind of solves the rationale in some sense. And there was another model that kind of and most scientists internal that it had a gone to versus nature. That's how they, and it doesn't because there's something happening no beginning in common that is very unlikely.
I'm out of way. So, yeah.
And it's kind of promise of which very common although so when we look at the alternatives called the bouncing or cyclic cosmology, these have various virtues according to some. One of the virtues, one of the founders of the new version of cyclic cosmology called cosmology, and he was one of the originators of what was called inflation. In other words, he was one of the founding who now not only has no support for inflation, he actively claims that inflation is baroque, pernicious, dangerous, malevolent, not just science, not just the cosmology, but just the science. So here's a man who created a theory that captivated the world of universe of cosmologists, such as there's the podcasters. But this man created this theory with cosmology, and now he's like, I joke, I'm like, you're denying paternity, like you're like a deadbeat dad. Now you're saying like inflation is relevant. Now, but he doesn't. What's very important about things that experimental? Got a lot of an experimentalist has to be confident to say like, I don't care if I prove you right or I prove your enemy wrong or whatever. We have to be like exterminators. Nobody likes exterminators. They need one. Garbage collectors, right? But it's vital that we be completely kind of unpersuaded by the beauty and the magnificent imagery and simplicity of something. Yeah, like it's beautiful, yes. But it also has consequences. I don't agree with it fully on this one. Those consequences are dangerous because they lead to things outside the purview of time. And in that sense, I can be part of what he does, but none of that detracts from the fact. And imagine like Elon comes up with a great idea, and then he's like, oh, actually, but like here's his better idea. He's like, SpaceX is not going to work, but he's now creating an alternative. It's extremely hard I'm gonna like have more and more attention paid to it because he's my friend or because I respect the man and his company. But nevertheless, this has certain attractions to it. And what it does most foremost is that it the quantum gravity aspect takes away 50% of the motivation of theory of quantum gravity. Talk a lot about quantum gravity. I talked to people on the show. Always latent in those conversations is sort of the teleological expectation. There is a theory of everything. There is a theory of quantum gravity. There's no law that we have to have a theory of quantum gravity.
That kind of expectation really cosmology, that core effect. Maybe you can speak to what is negative impacts on society of cosmology.
One of the more kind of robust predictions of inflation, according to other two patriarchs, patriarch Alan, on the pulsar, that the universe has to eventually get into quantum, has to fit silver space and silver space features, and those features become mechanical and properties, and then it becomes very difficult to turn inflation. So inflation can get started, but then it's like, well, SpaceX rocket. It's hard to turn off a solid rocket, right? It's thrusting energy. You need another mechanism to douse of expansion, which means that if inflation kicks off somewhere, it will kick off potentially everywhere at the time, including now, spawning an ever increasing set of universes. Some die, some will continue and flourish, and one is like paradigm. It's a robust, seemingly robust consequence, not only of the history of more and more we're seeing it during, sometimes two branches coming to the conclusion is taken as evidence. Yeah.
The negative consequences create phenomena that we can't, that are outside the science.
Yeah.
Or is it that the multiverse has a physical effect on humanity? I think it makes maybe life more meaningless. That worries me. Yeah, or is it not?
No, I think those are both kind of. The answer is a little both, because one sense meant kind of to explain this point that we find ourselves in a universe that's particularly the sun that has features, with our existence, and how could it be otherwise? On the other hand, it's a theory that predicts everything, literally everything, can be said to predict nothing. Like if I say, working out, you look like, you look like you're, about somewhere under 10,000. All right, yeah, you're right, but that's hardly precise.
Welcome. How are you? Living the dream, just watching some Lex Friedman. How about you? Oh, that's amazing. That's nice of you. Very cool.
And I like make it on myself so I can eat them all. But I managed to bring them. It's really hard to hear you.
I'm working on a project right now, so apologies if anything. Just watch your podcast, my friend. Some physicists.
Your voice is really kind of not coming through too well.
Dog, I'm working on this. I'm not close to the microphone. Apologies, my man.
That looks uncomfortable. It's like computer chair at a desk. You can find free computer chair at base. Greeting. The question arises.
All right, you ready for me? Okie doke. Neil, if you want to play, we play a game before we go to bed every night, and it is called the Plato app, Plato. It's on the App Store and Google Play. Feel free to download it if you'd like. It is on our phone, so I don't have that ability. Miss Aquarius, how was your day? It was lovely, thank you.
Okay, there we go. You sound like you'd be a really good mom. Oh, thank you.
Neil, you were correct. She would be.
Howdy. I don't know if it's a bad thing. I believe we're well things.
Good spin. That looked perfect. That was fast and right down the middle. Get that. Oh, I don't like that. All right, I got this one dancing in the corner. Get it. There we go.
Really good. I have a really old rebuild myself. Yay! 2 strikes! Go, girl!
Wow, it's tough today. She's been practicing. Oh, again, this corner garbage. Get it. Excellent. Had you repaired a motorcycle before? How long did it take you to fix up? Very cool. How often do you ride? Very well. Miss Aquarius, that looks good.
And every year that I've been seeing less motorcyclists.
You may be right. What?
I think people are more scared of usually.
Yeah, I can see that. Come on.
That's funny. I didn't
Do you wear a helmet? Well, that's not good. Well, that's pretty serious. Alright, Audie, I'm gonna catch you. Thank you, man.
We lived in South Park, 90s, all that, you know, that was incredible. Pretend on that in the back of the park, you know, and an older kid comes up behind me and puts on my leg and just pushes me and I fall back. And then I just put my hands out and I look and I see my arm is like 90 degrees. And all the kids just run in different directions. They'll run away. I try to help because fucking run away. And my sister, and my sister, just got walking back to the house. And my older sister takes my arm and puts it back in place as we're walking back because she didn't like looking at it. She said, that's crazy. But apparently it's good. Second time was a week after I got the very last cast off for the first time. And I was playing football running through the garage. I had a lot of people over. Running through the garage door. Someone kind of pushes me and I run sideways into the door. And I shake my arm up against the edge of the door, all like particularly where I broke my arm last time, and it just goes again. My life is pain. Okay. But this arm is longer than this one by like an inch now because of the bone growth. That's something. Yeah, I can reach things more. Super useful.
Yes, ma'am. Get it.
Apparently that's a procedure that like really short people can get. I don't want no more surgery. I don't want no surgery. I never will. Yeah, no, I'll do anything I possibly can to not get hurt anymore, but it's a also riding motorcycles. Yes. I think I want to get back into skateboarding though too.
I got a toast bar that they said they won't go away, but I'm not getting it because it's not hurt. So I don't want it to get more worse. So when it started hurting, that's when I had the surgery.
I'm pretty big about that.
I got a toast bar, and it's the only way you can get rid of it. To have surgery. I'm not having surgery. It's not bothering me. Go, Rabbi. Get it.
Like you're saying toaster as in like a bread toaster.
Microphone fight. I don't know how I got it.
On your toes, something on your toes.
Yeah.
Stir on your toes.
Like a heel spur?
Oh, a bone spur. Like, oh,
toe spur.
Bone spur. Okay. Sorry, I'm not.
I should back that one down.
Isn't that kind of just like calcium buildup? It's really painful pinch, kind of?
Yeah.
Okay, so I used to have those too. They really suck. I know those. It's when you walk on a specific part of your foot, isn't it?
Oh no. Don't Rabbi.
Get it.
No, I just know that I don't know how I got on my shoes. My socks was too tight.
Ooh.
I don't know. I just know, and I saw it. I was like, I gotta go check this out. Get this deal.
I don't know. I got sober recently in life, and I've started going on really long walks, like meditation. And I'm getting really happy from it. Like 6-mile walks daily. And I think that really helps me get rid of that. I don't experience it. It used to be on the end of my pinky toe. That's really terrible, painful. I feel like maybe I possibly could have one. That was in junior high, like high school. I was really overweight.
All right, good job.
I'm pretty lucky to not be a diabetic, actually.
Alrighty.
Good job. Excellent. Sweet dreams, Miss Aquarius.
I hope you had a good day, Addie. Good night. Oh, boy. Okay. Nice to meet you, Neil.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Good night.
Anytime there's a placeholder, or divided by a very small possible.
That's basically my undergraduate study in computer science, how to represent a floating point in a computer. I think I took that course. It's very easy.
Came to the right, but in terms of what business, you're right. I mean, business is widely, bluntly track infinity normalization and finite answers, and it's miraculous. But at a certain point, you have to ask, what are the consequences in the real world? Because what's the problem? Because they report many of the people that support, like Andre Linde. In fact, Andre Linde said, "You have a bias. People have bias that you believe in a universe, but don't you believe that what evidence you have that it's not?" But he turns it. Whereas Paul Steinhardt will say, "No, if anything can happen, then there's no predictive power within the theory.
because you can always say, well, this value of the inflationary field did not produce sufficient gravitational wave and energy for us to detect it. It's like kind of chewing,
I don't know much about your family history.
Yeah.
I don't know if you are related to Nazis.
Yeah.
As they say it, you are Rothschild. You remember how much I love bread. Like Hungary, that was the things he created about. I don't know.
What was amazing is how many of the scientists contributed to so much of what we understand today. And they were
Okay. Whatever is up on the fridge.
by the and then and only that if they weren't a member of some like you got a passport. I said Jew. And Beldonovich, the famous Yakov's and he had to only because he was like at a Nobel level and Nobel father of the Soviet could he even get his Jewish but only by virtue of his standing of intellectual.
There's 3,000 of us in the United States alone, and thousands of us around the world. That's a very small contingent of my family. I just said there are thousands of us. What do you mean there aren't many of us?
Into that part, like your direct relation to the bankers. Have you ever looked into that?
When's the last some of them are a lot like how
It actually really values and they that sense. Yes. From the society because this is basically a representation of New York.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it isn't role. Science is highly prized. Capital. Where are you from again? Maybe.
Nice.
And the people. Players. So
California.
interesting. Think of a world where science is highly prized, but they have to do that science within the constraints, always having another watching.
Yeah. I mean, one of the most famous tragic to me cases, Fritz Haber. I hate the wash process. Have you eaten yet? You look. I mean, you fast and you fast every day and you do that. Yeah. I said Cleb and you got a little.
What'd you say?
Because I'm lifting and I look slim.
He was a German national, and he personally went to the application as applied during trench warfare. Battles. They had 100.
It's really understood what they're talking about.
The fact that he would later be president, some of his relatives die in Auschwitz because of the chemical in Zyklon B. And so it's unbelievable. I feel like that does have resonance. So, science. Listen, follow this science. And there is still a danger. You know, I always say, just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you're religious. In my case, I talk a lot about the whole process. It's kind of like a kosher idol. Commercial, you know, harm. Want those that are so significant intellectual. There is a core of America and Western in general that does worship and really look at science. Predominantly. But there's nothing about that. So for me, it's hard. Between looking at science and wisdom, I don't think it has. But also recognizing how much good and transformation.
Yeah, but as I said previously, not right now. I'm working on a project, my friend. Robot. I build robots and I'm making adjustments to them. No, it's quite complicated. Really. You have to be really careful. Timing's really important. Every consistency is really important on your device. Like basically, you have to ensure that you're programming it consistently in the same places every time. If you don't do that, then it's not going to work. I don't.
I just went recently how that's a thing.
Yeah.
I heard Roblox is like the economy on Roblox is insane. There's a lot of money in Roblox.
I do things that are people, and I don't do things that hate.
That's pretty cool. I'm all about.
And I once had this conversation. You know, it was my first podcast.
People having a conversation like this.
I think it's actually my first. And
Just drop.
Yeah. It's gonna be confident about.
I think people don't know why anyone needs the whole game. Guess we the greatest scientist, not his science. Actually, his science.
When I took it, you tell me something. What do you do on Sunday? Church. I don't go to church. And I'm like, well, imagine there was like an intelligent alien. He was looking down, or she was it. I don't know. Thing was looking down, and it's Freeman. And on Sundays, like a group of people go to church, but Freeman doesn't go. And then there's another group of people that don't go to church, and those are called atheists. But Freeman calls himself agnostic, but he doesn't. Richard Dawkins didn't go to the same church that Richard Dawkins. So I said, how would you distinguish yourself if not practice? Mentality, influence, mind, bodily, action. When I was a child, I got my first telescope. I was actually an altar boy in Catholic church. Yeah, Jewish kid who grew up. But I was fascinated by these. Can we get into it for a second?
Sure, absolutely. I've got a section of this Discord. It says "Ask Rabbi anything." Ask any question that you want, and when I have time, I will certainly answer it for you.
Not to be rude, but to be fucking rude. Came in here extremely disrespectful. And now you want to talk on that topic.
I have a terrible.
Yeah, do not at your fingertips. Study my friend. Probably not even.
Well, I'm in front of a real Jewish Ashkenazi Rothschild. So I'd love that. Yeah.
And I'm willing to answer any question that you have. So right there in that section, ask Rabbi anything. I will answer any question that you have. Feel free to ask away. Yeah, ask any question that you have there, my friend.
Whatever I do, Christianity in this case, all the way. I had like action basket, contribution. But in this case, I was 13. Not, I don't know if you remember, we were 13. But if you extrapolate the next level up, the next level up from confirmation, older boy is priest. I don't know if you're aware of this, but priest are not
Take care, Neil. Come back anytime, but ask any question that you have in that Ask Rabbi Anything. If you have any questions, I'll answer them there. It's literally the section right above this VC. You're welcome, Big Dog. All right, man. Oh, you can't. Let's see here. Let's fix that. All right. That's my. I doesn't have permission. Channel permission. Everyone. View channel, manage channel, permission. Create, send message. Send messages. Allows members to send messages in the channel.
Billion light years away from Earth. You can do that without one that's a little more expensive. Get one amount. That's now your smartphone. How's that? And with that, it's something that no other science, to my knowledge, can really replicate. Maybe biology, but you can experience the physical sensation that Galileo experienced when he turned a telescope like that and saw these four dots, or that Saturn had ears, it's called, or that the moon was not crystalline polished and heavenly substance has it, right? So where else can you be instantly connected? The first person to ever make that system. Try doing that with payphones. Get yourself an LHC and smash together, high luminosity, call it Harry Potter, and say, I want to reckon, how did you get it? None of them. Pilot. Max Immigrant.
It's almost like another one like that is fire. Build a bonfire. You actually if you use a lighter, I think actually what you probably or however you do that in the bottom tool, that's probably the best part.
Yeah.
And then you get the magic of what by the way, it's
a little bit of a swag up there.
Pulling like very uncomfortable feet. Not really. This is my childhood development.
a kid in college, but I'm 100% not comparing myself to Cal. It's going to confuse me. But I did replicate exactly what you did. Weird. Let me write it down. So it had another effect, which all good scientists, budding scientists do, and all parents should do. You get a little notebook, pencil, write down what you hypothesize, not like in the high school, like hypothesis, but just like, wow, how did I feel? Better yet, astronomy, yes, eight, seven systems, anywhere on Earth. So when you do that, yeah, you're connecting different hemispheres of the brain, and you're connecting super things. You certainly have the knowledge in your connections between right now and research. The goal of science is not to replicate other did, it's something. And that's what research is, not just studying, and so doing, you start to train a kid for 50 bucks. It's unbelievable. And now we can do better. Share it on Instagram, whatever, and you can, by doing so, have an entree into the world of really needing this and do something. I was taught this by my English grade, that the word educate doesn't mean we're into terms of facts. It's not like machine learning that you're just showing like things of cat. You're not in bringing it out. We're out of it, not at the right? And what more could a teacher want? To have some kid is discussion. You're not going to see. Yes.
Fire. Yeah, shout out to Mr. Pumpkin.
He's a big fan.
Yeah, excellent. Take the book. Okay, so then that's what. But then there is the dramatic journey of scientist, university, graduate, postdoc, all the way to where you are today. What's that notable?
I call that the academic Hunger Games. Like you're competing against like these people, who are just getting smarter all the time as you're getting smarter. They want to get into a fewer and fewer number of slots, fewer slots to get into college than in high school, the fewer slots to graduate school, there's very fewer slots. Many, maybe number of people faculty applicants for one position. It's almost getting impossible. But I almost can't conceive of doing what people applying to become an assistant professor at a state university. It takes so much courage. So I went from, in New York, thinking I would never be a professional astronomer, A, because I didn't know any. I'd never seen any. I didn't even know that they existed. And I thought, who's going to pay me to look at stars? Like, pay me to be like an ice cream taster? Like, it's not something I look at. Even if I had the brilliant privilege. And then I went to graduate. And during graduate school, I had this kind of on again, off again relationship. I knew that he was an athlete. He had left himself across the country. And in that time, I learned a lot about him, and I learned that he got very not seminal work on equation. Anyway, he turned away from that foundation. At that time, I was around here, and I was, thinking, oh, maybe I'll do this. I never thought I'd be a theorist. Pretty impressive. And but it would always appeal to me, like, why not do what made me happy? Well, like, we often forget about those primitive things. Probably the most sustainable, durable, resilient attributes. With my own kids, I was like, what are they interested now? And it doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. Someone would play for hard, but how less than the professor.
I ask you, other just a small thing. Think about it. Its mathematical journey reverberates far.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it did in very many. and he's been gone for a long time. Thinking back to that time with him, he must have built some capacity for me. Only wanted to spend my time. I don't think, but to go into one of the most challenging, interesting things, the limited time that we for him, foundation. For me, it was the foundations of the universe. How did they come to be? And I felt like, while people were trying Einstein to have Einstein really make great progress in the foundations of quantum mechanics. An exciting time. The Kobe satellite had just released data that the universe had this anisotropy pattern. Hawking called it like the God, and so forth. And so it seemed like this is a good name for what I'm going to do. I'm more interested. But always about that, I wanted to understand. I didn't want to be a wrench. No offense to people that just do experiment, and no offense to monkeys. But thinking back to what animates me, not doing the engineering, is getting the data. But there's a lot of stuff. I want to be the guy understanding what made the universe produce. I always joke with here's. I want to be what they call a guy who has. So I want to be like that for theoretical. Be like the guy doing the theory, but understanding the theory.
I love that formulation. Theorist, understanding the source you're getting. Signal is primary. The thing you measure is primary, and theory is search of explaining how the signal is all about. Yeah, I see the things behind it. Neuroscience in that way. It's ultimately about the kind of and that's it. With playing experimental physics, ultimately at the end of the day is all about
Maybe those two things. Yeah. Not the way, man.
We're gonna get to that.
But getting back, so or I always say, like, I want to try this. You said you wouldn't answer anything. What's the most important day? Don't tell me to you. What is your most important day? No, just answer it. Like, you don't tell me the exact date of the calendar. Birthday, whatever, but
there's so many of them. Even though I'm single, how does that even? So a day, like a month and a day, yeah. For me, it would be December 31st.
Yeah, I was gonna say New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Some people's birthday, anniversary, birth. They're usually signifying beginnings and ends. January, the portal between God, the portal between. So you're looking back, maybe Russian, that side, the light side looking forward to January being great. So everybody's most important usually it was the significant thing of all the universe was born. And I didn't think there again. I just there was a mental obstruction that I didn't realize that I could get past. I didn't think like was it? Like I knew astronomers answered versus that and it's billion. Now we know it's 13.872 billion. So incredible the 5 did what is it? 13.870 870 billion.
So there are a lot of plus or minus on that.
So for me, I'm 50. So it would be the equivalent of looking at me and telling you it's in 12 hours, half a percent accuracy.
There's a confidence behind that.
Oh yeah, I mean there's a significance. Yeah, no, extremely accurate. One of the most precise we have. In contrast to 25 years ago, we didn't know if in our 20s that there were stars in our galaxy. These to be as they are in the universe. That would be like you being there.
Can we actually take a tangent on a tangent? How old first can you number. How do we know currently with the 5
we come about in a few different ways. Basically, they rely on the number and constant. Hubble constant is this weird number that has the following units: it has the kilometers per second per megaparsec. So it's a speed per distance. It means you multiply it by distance, you get a speed. What is the speed you're measuring? Well, you're measuring the speed of a distant galaxy, any megaparsec. Galaxy at 1 megaparsec actually is true because of fact. But if you go out, say 1 megaparsec, I would say that galaxy is 72 kilometers. And every galaxy, except the very most surrounding, half a dozen galaxies, out of 500 billion galaxies, perhaps a trillion, 12 out of that number are moving towards us, the rest are moving. So that number is inverted. When did those things last touch each other? All those galaxies. Now they're really far apart. You don't know how fast they're away. Very simple problem to solve. When were they touching? That's where you get that.
There's the local 12 and then the rest.
Or the 12.
There's how does the beginning of the history of that beginning epoch change the calculation?
Very little, because we understand how there's some other ingredients that go into it, namely how much energy there is in the universe, how much dark matter there is, light, neutrino, and how much ordinary matter.
Okay, so it appears that the universe is bigger than it is.
Yeah, so you're talking about the fact that we can, in our observable that's located that is farther than the speed of light times the naively. You're right. If the universe was static, if the universe came into existence, the universe came into a Big Bang in a fixed universe, so the universe just started off. Those galaxies were, they could be moving away from us. That you could say, I can see a galaxy distance of only 13.8 billion years times. That's really true. But the fact that the light is expanding along with the expansion of the universe. So imagine there was some very distant past. We were near a galaxy. It's going to produce some light. That galaxy is going to be moving away from it. Light's going to be getting more and more red shift. It's going to be moving farther and farther away from it as time goes on. Acceleration, error, dark energy. The light signal, there'll be some cone of expansion from which represents all the things that we can get information from. We can't currently communicate with that galaxy. It sends us some light. Now it's moving away and it sends us some light. Because the space is also dragging the photons with it, photons participating in the expansion of redshift, that we see things out to where the universe first began expanding, not just when it began existence. And because the universe is expanding, down yet, that we can see things approximately 3 times the age of the universe away from it. We can see the age of the universe 15 billion years. We see things at 45 billion light years in that direction. And we see things at 45 billion light years in that direction. Telescopes aren't maybe. I mean, we see things that themselves are 90 billion light years away. So the diameter is another answer beyond that. No. Don't get pressure. There's not only one.
How are you emotional? That are you ending like
Annie Hall?
I'll go up this.
I realize.
Annie Hall is some kind of what is the
propagandist? With Woody Allen, certainly canceled. But nevertheless, back when he made a movie called Annie Hall, in which it's a self-depiction. He's like a Larry David, neurotic, typical neurotic young Jew, Brooklyn, and he all of a sudden tells his mother he's not doing it. He refuses to do it. The universe is anything. Not the what are you talking about? We're in Brooklyn. Brooklyn is not expanding. And that's true. Brooklyn is not expanding. Fellowship is not expanding. So oftentimes they get asked, what is the universe expanding? What is it expanding? And I say, it's actually seen friends it goes up to AC rocket, right? What's outside of the rocket? If you take this ball, empty out this, take the cap off, go outside the rocket, put some tap, screw on the cover of it. What's in there? Is it empty?
That's just semantics, I guess. Yeah.
No, it's definitely not.
So you step outside the rocket.
Yeah, you're in the vacuum. Vacuum.
No more liquid.
No more liquid. Just one cubic centimeter of box. You take it out outside of a fountain. What's inside that? Not empty. There's actually going to say there's 420 photons from the fusion of light elements. That's called the cosmic microwave background inside that box at any second.
All right, hold on. What? 400. That's I've heard that. Okay, let's. Wow, physics works in mysterious ways.
Okay, millimeter box.
What are we? What's in the box?
I'm gonna get. That's right. Let's think outside the box. Think it inside. If you every cubic centimeter of our universe is with heat left over from the Big Bang.